Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 13th annual Mayor's Luncheon with LA City Mayor Eric Garcetti. And this is the 13th year that we have had this luncheon going on from the United Chambers of Commerce. It was originally started by Richard Leyner. Richard Leyner, let's give Richard a hand. Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, as we all know, Richard passed away last year. But Richard's legacy and his commitment to doing what's right for the San Fernando Valley and for Los Angeles is really a testament to the great work he has done over so many years. And so to honor him, this event is named the Richard Leyner Mayor's Luncheon.
Good to see so many dear old friends and faces. As a matter of fact, I may have noticed some new faces on some of the old faces, but this is Hollywood, so who cares, right?
It's my honor to be a 94-year-old veteran of Patton's 3rd Army Combat Engineers to open today's luncheon for Mayor Eric Garcetti.
I grew up in a small town of 500 people. I was never bad, because if I was, the neighbor down the street would tell my parents. You know that if you were in a small town. We were basically the same. We had a few families of color. We had a few families of different cultures. But to me, this was the beginning of my friendships. My mother, who was an excellent cook, we had a small hotel and she used to learn to cook from the European chefs, always had something good, and everybody wanted to be at my home. Shh, over there, please. If it was Sunday or holidays, we always had a lot of people around the table. My father, who many of you would have liked, made it very clear to my brothers and me, be very proud of who you are, but you better respect those that are different. And today, in the last year or so, I've been very troubled by something, and that is the bullying that's going on in schools. Whether a child walks differently, talks differently, a different color, a different headband, they're being bullied. And worse than that, it's not only boys, it's girls. And worse than that, research shows that many of them come from good homes, our homes. Now, we set an example for our children, and we have to set a better example than what we're doing. If you were watching TV on Sunday, you saw something wonderful that brought tears to my eyes. You may not remember, and you may be one of them, but there's nothing worse for a kid than going to the cafeteria and sitting alone. In Boca Raton, they have a high school of 3,400 children. A young man who was a Jamaican came to school there and sat alone. In a year or two, he started a club of 50 students. The president of the class, the captain of a football team, a chemistry student, it made no difference. It was 50 kids who got together, and when they went to the cafeteria, if they saw someone alone, they would say, hey, my name's Gloria, what's yours? Hi, Sally, I want to be your friend. And this has caught on to many different schools. I'm so terribly proud of these kind of students who hopefully are not like the others that I mentioned. Now, are we going to change the world? No. Do we have a chance of changing where we are? Fine. I think where we are is one of the nicest places in the United States. I say we live by example, and I say that we have time to give people. For instance, from November 15th to January 15th, there are 20 holidays for 7 different religions. As my father said, respect the differences in these people. But there's something you can do. Don't tell me that you don't find the time, because you can find the time. My boss walks in the morning, and he says, "Hello, Gloria, how are you? How's your husband?" And he means it. He's as busy or busier than most of you, but he finds time to appreciate. Other people do other things. There are so many of our elderly people who are home alone and have no one to talk to. At one of our groups, One Generation, we have lots of different people who volunteer and go and sit with these people. My own friend just lost her spouse, and it's my job to bring her spirits up and to spread hope. So what I'm saying to you, there's things, we are 450 people. If each of us do one thing in the next month to make someone's life a little better. My friend Kathleen Sterling beat me to the punch, and in her latest Warner Center News, she just mentions a few things. She says, invite someone who lives alone to your holiday dinner. What's one more person? Bring office supplies. Bring them to the extras and bring them to your schools. This is for all of us. Call your mother. Help an elderly person load their packages into the car. Small acts of kindness mean a lot. There was a song years and years ago, little things mean a lot. Well, they do. And I think that when I look out at this audience, I see the best of the best. We are good. Let us be better. Thank you for letting me take this time.
It's our pleasure to introduce and welcome the Mayor of the City of Los Angeles, the Honorable Eric Garcetti.
You're consummate pros. Let's give another round of applause to Bert and Jane and the entire Bachman family, who have been the backbone of this city, of our San Fernando Valley, and we are so indebted to them for all the good work they do. As I said last year, I'm not just a friend, I'm a customer, and we love our Ford at home. So thank you so much. And thank you to the United Chambers for, again, welcoming me back to my hometown to be here in the San Fernando Valley, a place that shaped me, a place that made me, whether it was growing up on Woodley Avenue or spending afternoons school in Studio City or in Sherman Oaks, my cousins who lived in Tarzana and Woodland Hills, my grandparents on Hart Street in Van Nuys, my cousins that were in Pacoima. This is where I became a man. This is where I became an activist. This is where I became and learned how to be an Angelino and a public servant. And coming here always reminds me of those values that we need now more than ever. Because growing up, we knew who we were. We knew our neighbors. We knew each other. We played on the streets. We would see the police officers coming on the patrols by us. We could walk over to the Little League. I played over in Encino Little League, and we could have our own community garden plot and see our neighbors and talk to them and understand that, yes, we lived in one of the greatest big cities in the world, but we also lived in this small town where we knew one another and cared for one another. And when I became your mayor some 5 years ago almost, well, 4 years ago and 4.5 years ago, I wanted to return this city to those values while also making key investments and changing the attitude at City Hall to be a place where we could create jobs again, a place where we could provide city services again, a place where we could invest in our future again while also returning to the things that have always made us great. And I think after 4.5 years, by so many measures, Los Angeles is on fire. And I mean that in a good way, because I know we've been on fire in a bad way a couple times. If you look at just the indicators, when I met Mike Bloomberg, the great mayor of New York, we overlapped for a few months, he said, Eric, when I was in business, I had a product, I sold information, but when I'm mayor, my product is people. How many choose to live in my city? How many choose to work in my city? How many choose to visit my city and study in my city? And by those 4 measures, Los Angeles is at its peak. We didn't have a jobs peak since 1992 after the riots. We went down for almost 20 years. And 2 years ago, our collective work to try to make this a place that jobs came to again resulted in the highest employment we've ever seen in the city of LA. We know there's more residents, and people would leave if they didn't want to be here. In fact, we've seen other cities that have had their population slashed in half, places like Detroit or Pittsburgh, who couldn't keep up with the times, who are now struggling to get back there. We've seen places that people don't want to visit because tourists, if you're taking your vacation, you want to go someplace you're going to enjoy. We broke and almost shattered record after record after record the last 4 years, 49 million visitors nearly last year. And then when you look at the number of people that study here, and our great universities, starting here in the Valley with CSUN, looking at our community college system. Got some Matadors over there? All right. Make some noise, Matadors. All right. The side of my second State of the City address, or whether it's Pierce and Valley and the other great institutions here, we know that we are attracting more people to study in LA than ever before. And by so many measures, whether it's breaking records at the Port of LA for cargo, a 10-year-old record, whether it's passengers at LAX, nearly 80 million, which makes us now the busiest airport in America of origination and destination. Last year, LA to China displaced New York to London as the most important air corridor internationally in the world, and we're not going back. $8 billion of land use investment, the most in our city's history. Looking at the number of miles of streets that we've paved, 7,300, the most in our history. Sidewalks, the back-to-basic things that I remember that we had growing up that we had taken our eye off the ball in doing. We have so much good news in this city. And I could keep going on, but I want to talk today not just about what's good, but the challenges that remain. Because our prosperity, the unemployment that you as job creators have helped cut in half since I've been your mayor, the investments that are historic that we're making in our infrastructure, which I'll talk about in a moment, we face nothing less than the California dream disappearing if we don't do some important work in the coming years. And I told my staff in July, after I was sworn into my second term, and thank you to the voters who surpassed my wildest expectations and returned me with an 81% vote to be your mayor, I said, this is not our second term in office. This is our second first term. And we should treat every day like it's our first day. Nothing that we've done is the best way. There is still a better way. Don't pat ourselves on the back about how much progress we've made. What are we going to do today? And those things that we are addressing, I see our Salvation Army here. I was just out in the streets of the San Fernando Valley doing outreach with LA Family Housing, which does our outreach to our homeless Angelenos. We have challenges that if we don't deal with and solve, we will see this prosperity for our children disappear. I was with Frank Luntz, who is the Republican pollster. Some of you may see him sometimes on the news. And he said, you know what, Eric? There's the American dream. Everybody knows what that is. And he said, but California is different than any other state in America. Because in those states, they don't talk about the blank dream. But there is a California dream. It's not that people in Missouri or Kansas or Texas or New Hampshire don't think about those things, but they don't have those phrases. There isn't the Florida dream. That isn't a rhetorical instrument that they use. But here in California, there is, and not just for Californians, but for everybody around this country and indeed the world, there's the idea of the California dream. And what is that predicated on? That you can find a good job, that you can find good housing, and a good education, right? That we would leave where we were. The good weather didn't hurt either, but that we would find a place where the sun not only shined and it was 72 and sunny every day, but where we could find opportunity. Whether we came from Missouri or Mazatlan, whether we came here lucky enough to be born here like myself, a fourth generation member of Los Angeles or a resident of Los Angeles, or those who are getting off a plane today or a bus right now with that idea. So what threatens that today? I would say there's three things. One of them is poverty. The second related to that is our housing. And third is our transportation network. You see, we've done some smart things over the last 4 years. When I became mayor, I decided we had to focus on making sure that jobs stayed here. It wasn't enough to say we had good weather. And so whether it was legacy industries like aerospace and filming, which is here in the San Fernando Valley. I spent all the political capital I had in Sacramento the first year, working with great state leaders and a very hesitant, skeptical governor who, thank you, Jerry Brown, did sign an expansion of our film tax credit. We've got Senator Stern here today, and we've got folks who know that this isn't just about LA. With the smallest of subsidies that we are able to expand, that returns that money manyfold, we've brought $2 billion of filming back to Los Angeles in the last 3 years, over 50,000 middle-class jobs in the film industry because we were smart. In aerospace, absolutely. In aerospace, I brought together 4 counties, Orange, Ventura, Los Angeles, and San Diego, to compete for federal dollars to help us retool our manufacturing for aerospace and to train a workforce to work in those plants again. And not only did we win the designation, which was very competitive around the country for the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership, we've brought over $1 billion of federal funds to help us do that, to land the next generation of bombers and of drones, of people who are working in the aerospace industry, making parts right here in the San Fernando Valley that we're shipping to places like Japan and Australia and China, because this is where the best manufacturing still exists. We've worked with companies like Witt out in North Hollywood and companies that are part of the manufacturing base that, for us, was always the backbone of this valley, to keep them here and to keep them winning contracts abroad and throughout this country. So those things that we've done have been smart, but we need to make sure that we have jobs for the next generation. And it's not just the big company jobs. It's a lot of you who come from the small businesses that generate the new jobs. That's why we competed for and won a nationwide competition with the Small Business Administration to create a new process and website. It's called Startup in a Day, because all of you who have started a business know what brain damage it is. Okay, the city needs me to do this, the other city department needs me to do that, the county wants me to do this, the state I have to go through 4 agencies, then the feds want me. By the time you're done, we should give you a prize just for actually starting a business before you even have your first customer. And so what we did was bring that all together. And now if you go to business.lacity.org, you'll see a portal that isn't just there now for Los Angeles, but that is this, we wrote it, and it's being used by cities around the country through the Small Business Administration as the model for how you can get actually a startup, a business, done within a day, so that we can make sure that your ideas get to job creation more quickly. It's why we lowered our city's business tax, our gross receipts tax, which is gross in so many ways, and why in the second term I need your help to see if we can lower it on our way to eliminating something that taxes your gross receipts, not your income, not your profits, but the amount of money that flows through you, so that we can create more jobs. And people said, you can't do things like raise the minimum wage and reduce taxes. Republicans don't like one, Democrats don't like the other. But because we had a coalition, we were able to do both and create a record number of jobs. So we have to continue making those investments in small businesses. Now, where can we do that? Let me give you a couple ideas. The voters last November, while everybody was caught up in national elections, did some very significant things here in LA. In one single night, almost a year ago, a little over a year ago in November, we passed 5 measures. One, to build out our community colleges, which I'm so proud to be the largest city in America where we made community college free under my initiative, LA Promise, which is now California Promise, which will make it free for everybody. We launched at Pierce College, the kickoff of this, we have 40% increase from LAUSD, because now a young person knows when she or he graduates from LAUSD, they're guaranteed free community college, which is a great savings on the way if they want to, a 4-year degree, or we have a foster son right now getting his credentials in the community college system here in LA as a chef. There's so many industries, the way that we saved the aerospace jobs here through some of the adult ed that we have. That's in place, and voters voted to see that expanded. Second, we voted for expansion of our park system to make sure that we have green spaces for young people to play in and our health improves. Third, we passed something which would allow us to finally address the greatest crisis we have, that of homelessness. Measure HHH will build 10,000 units of housing, because I was just out, as I mentioned, by the LA River just before this. I had to change clothes back into the suit for you, but I was talking to a woman who's living in an RV. And we have all sorts of discussions about, we push the RVs around different places. Nobody wants them on our street. Her husband was gone at work. He's working. She's dealt with mental health for 10 years. She's originally here from the Southland. She grew up in Lancaster and now in the San Fernando Valley, where she and her husband lived in an apartment, but when the rents went up, they couldn't afford it. And so for 3 years, they've been living in an RV. And as I talked to her, I realized she was not the stereotype that some people have. She has no substance abuse issues. She needs the mental health care that she deserves. But she wants to be in housing. She wants to work. Her husband is working. Her RV was spotless. She cleans up around the area. And I know that's not the case in every single person, but if we don't solve homelessness, we will not be able to. I know we talked, Bachman's and I, just a couple of years ago, when people come off of our freeways, you can't miss it. When you drive around our city, Vince Scully during the World Series, I was so excited to sit next to Vince Scully during the World Series during Game 6. And he said, I know you've moved a lot of homeless people from downtown to Woodland Hills to make downtown look good, but you need to do something in Woodland Hills. And I said, Vin, it's everywhere. Nobody got moved out. It's that a lot of people can't find apartments. I had a friend whose boyfriend was hospitalized because of a substance abuse issue. He's clean, was doing well, was living in the hospital, and they got a voucher to be able to put him in housing. And she visited 127 apartments before she could find one that would take him in because of the vacancy rates. So voters passed Measure HHH, which showed us just how big our hearts are in this town. And then in less than a season, in March, we voted for Measure H, which will give $350 million a year in services to make sure you can build housing, but if people don't stay in housing because we don't heal them, they won't get well. And that passed as well. And then the fifth was that we passed Measure M. And I thank you, because when I came to you last year, remember, I said, we need your help. Because anybody been stuck in traffic lately? A few of us. It's still there. The Bachmans won't sell many cars if we don't start moving traffic. We won't get home to our families if we don't solve traffic. Companies will say, I'd like to be in LA, but I'm not going there if we don't solve traffic. And so we didn't just pass the biggest in the city's history. We didn't just pass the biggest in the state's history. We passed the biggest initiative in this nation's history times 2, $120 billion just in the next 40 years alone, that will create 770,000 new jobs through Measure M. And it will bring improvements to the Orange Line. It'll bring the long-awaited North-South Valley Line that'll also come down through the backbone of the valley. It'll finally get us through the Sepulveda Pass. It'll connect us from North Hollywood to the Burbank Airport and to Pasadena. It will do things on our roads to pave and improve our roads, to fix our freeways. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, right? When they passed, I was like, great, we passed the biggest homeless measure and the biggest transportation measure in our city's history. But everybody who was homeless the day before was still living on the streets. Everybody stuck in traffic was still in traffic. So now it's the implementation of it. And why I bring that up in the jobs category is we will, if we do this right, create jobs. Jobs in building housing, jobs in construction, jobs in transportation. It frustrates me that when I think about what we're doing at the Port of LA, where I'm investing $2.5 billion to modernize the #1 port in America, a place where 43% of the goods come into America, or the airport, where we're spending $15 billion to finally make it so you can get through the horseshoe in less than an hour and a half, and continue the growth and the investment that we need. It frustrates me that when we are spending $120 billion for 15 new rail lines in Southland, rapid transit lines, and our freeway improvements, that I can't find a single American company that's left that builds equipment for our ports. There's not a single American company that builds train cars anymore. And while I'm glad to have foreign companies come here and create jobs for many of us that are here locally, wouldn't it be amazing if we could bring back some of the jobs we've lost in things like aerospace manufacturing by having public transportation vehicle manufacturing right here, by having this be the test bed for autonomous vehicles. It was recently announced we'll be the second city, and I bet you'll be able to get it at Galpin first, to test with Uber vertical takeoff and landing cars. I know it sounds outlandish, right, that the Jetsons are finally here, but the head of JPL's autonomous vehicle lab was just at Union Station with us, and they've been working on it. They say they have a vehicle about the size of a Prius that they're going to work with our first responders that can be an ambulance, that in the middle of traffic, if somebody is having an incident, can come pick somebody up and take them to a hospital in a fraction amount of time and maybe save their lives. These things are not far out. You see Elon Musk literally, with what is a very boring topic, drilling through the Southland with new tunnels. I think one person got the boring joke there. Hyperloop is based here, essentially a vacuum tube to move both either goods or people. And no place in America and the world is the transportation technology capital. This is open for us to grab and to get. And if you think we can't do this, just look at what we've done with clean tech. You know how many coal jobs there are in America right now? There's 50,000 more or less, 54,000. In the city of LA in the last 4 years, all of us together have created 20,000 jobs in clean energy, just here in this city that's 1% of the nation's population. And we're going to make DWP, for those who experienced what happened out in the Porter Ranch area, 100% renewable utility. And in doing that, create jobs right here in our backyard that can make us have those small businesses be a part of it. I went after the Olympics, not only because I loved being here in 1984, and I'm so proud we will have events right here in the San Fernando Valley, because that didn't happen in 1984. We'll have equestrian, we'll have our shooting, we're going to have our whitewater rafting or whitewater canoeing, which, by the way, will leave a great legacy afterwards, and Lake Balboa is a place people can come for years after the Olympics. But I also want to make sure that small businesses here get a piece of that $7 billion of action we're going to be spending and the profits that we make from this. Because, make no mistake, we'll make $500 million to $1 billion in profits, as we did in '84. Money we're already putting back into making this coming year youth sports universally accessible to every kid in every neighborhood, regardless of their income, at every city rec and parks facility. So jobs is that first piece. Second, housing. Some companies may decide, okay, there's enough action here, the jobs are being created, but can I decide to stay here, or do I want to come here when it's the price of housing? Vahid and I were, where's Vahid? Vahid, who is our new city planning commissioner here from the San Fernando Valley, and I were talking about what it meant when rents went up, for him as a renter at the time, for other folks in his Chamber of Commerce. That meant that there's less money in your own pocket to start your own small business or to invest in what's there around us. When you look at the need for housing, I know a lot of people, trust me, I get the feeling, we have enough traffic, I don't want to see anything else built. But if we don't build our way out of this, this is pure supply and demand. You care about homelessness and ending homelessness? If we don't build units of housing, it just is supply and demand. People won't be able to get into housing. We won't be able to attract companies. Those of us who own homes are lucky we got into that lottery when we did, because if you're a young person now, good luck buying anything. That doesn't mean we have to accept that, though, as the future. We can build new housing throughout Los Angeles and still preserve the single-family neighborhoods that we know and love. That's part of the reason that we in the city have just put forward a law where we will invest our collective money in transit corridors, incentives to build housing right there, especially affordable housing, so that we don't build lines and then displace the same people that needed that public transportation in the first place. They live further out, and we wonder why traffic went up, because they have to commute in from even further and further places. So what can you do? You can do all sorts of things. We now passed something called the accessory dwelling unit legislation. That's a fancy way of saying kind of the granny flats that many people have in the back of their homes. We have 500,000 single-family homes in Los Angeles. If just 10% of them built in their backyard a unit, which you could make money off of or give to a family member, that would be 50,000 units of housing added to the supply tomorrow, without it being some big building someplace. And thank you to our state for leading the way and pushing us to make that happen. We have to be able to say yes, not just no. Permanent supportive housing, which is a fancy way of describing housing for folks who have been homeless, who get both an apartment and the services they need to stay in there, are beautiful. If you don't want quote-unquote homeless housing in your neighborhood, let us show you some great projects right here in the San Fernando Valley that people walk by and ask us all the time, how do I get in that building? That's a gorgeous building. Well, you probably don't qualify because it's for folks who have been homeless. They're like, homeless people are living there? Because our choice isn't whether we're going to bring homeless people to our neighborhood or not. It's whether we're going to house the ones that are in our neighborhood or not. The woman I spoke to today in the RV, we asked her in the survey we were doing, where do you want to live? She said, well, this is home. I want to live here in Canoga Park. People know and have friends and connections even on the street with where they are. This past year, we moved somebody into Chatsworth. I'll tell you the quick story on this. There was a woman and a man who were living on the streets together here. They're a generation apart. And the man who we came, and many of you have participated in the initiative I have called Welcome Home, where you can put together a kit for folks who have gotten housing, but they don't necessarily have the blankets and the towels and the soap and all the things that turn a house into a home. And we were moving this man in. I asked him, what's your story? He said, well, I've been homeless for 13 years here in the San Fernando Valley. Where were you born? I was born on a reservation, Navajo reservation. And in the Vietnam War, I got drafted and I fought in the war. And he said, I was in a foxhole during a really tough firefight. And the man next to me, my brother, my fellow soldier, turned to me and said, if I don't make it out of this, will you make me a promise? He said, of course, anything. What is it? Will you promise to take care of my little daughter? I don't know, and I need to know that somebody will raise her. And thank God, both of them made it out of that firefight and lost touch and never talked to one another. And then he said, I was on the streets and, surviving. He didn't have any substance abuse issues. He had some mental health problems, I think, but he didn't know how to get off the street anymore. And there was a woman that lived on the street, and they kind of decided to adopt each other. She adopted him as dad, and he adopted her as daughter. And after a couple weeks with their tents living next to each other here in the valley, he said, what was your last name again? And she said it, and he said, he stopped in his tracks, and he said, you're the daughter of the man that I promised to take care of his daughter in Vietnam. I'm not making this up. And he said, somehow God brought us together in a different place, in a different time, in a different battle, to look out for one another. So if we don't bring Angelinos home, it's easy to look out there and to decide who we think those folks are and to push them from place to place. Trust me, I get it. It can be overwhelming. For your block or for your street, you deserve the services that the city and the county, now that the money is starting to flow October 1st from the county, and some of our housing money now is starting, we're having our first groundbreaking next month. You deserve that. But we also need to make sure that while we don't ignore the communities that need help, we can't ignore the stories of the people that are there, because we will only solve this one person at a time. That's at the low end. At the high end, we won't get those opportunities for middle class home ownership if we don't have, among other things, a deduction for mortgages, which I'm sure our realtors would tell us this week it's important to call senators and remind them of. But if we don't build housing and let people in. So in my first term, I'm going to be focused like a laser on this, and there's so much you can do. You can say yes when there's a proposed permanent supportive housing building in your neighborhood. You can show up at that meeting so it's not just the voices of no. You can build something, an accessory dwelling unit, in your own yard. You can help us at your church or synagogue. Find a place, as we have now with churches and temples throughout Los Angeles, who are beginning to open up their parking lots to those RVs so that they can actually get hooked up with things like water and electricity, and we can begin to give them services to bring them home. Because just pushing them from one block to another is a time-proven strategy not to work. The third thing that I want to talk about is traffic, and I mentioned this with Measure M. But we have a real opportunity here. There will be the biggest change, I believe, in our lives since freeways were built in Los Angeles to the way that we move. The way that we move goods, the way that we move people. Whether it's interconnected cars, whether it's autonomous vehicles, whether it's looking at the way that we're looking at three-dimensional space to move people, as I mentioned before, and our investments in public transportation. We have an amazing opportunity here. And I'm as frustrated as you. I wish there was something we could do overnight. When I heard that Measure M passed and we finally have the money to do something in Sepulveda to pass, I said, so remind me, how much does this cost and how quickly we're going to get this? Well, it's not while I'm your mayor. I hope it's while it's the next mayor. It's $9 billion, and to be able to keep it going, you probably have to do something like the toll lanes, at least on the carpool lanes, just to pay for it. Well, that's the old way of getting things done, but we may have new technologies that work. For instance, BYD, which is a company out of China that has its headquarters for the Americas right here in Los Angeles, which helps make the largest electric car manufacturer in the world now, has a new monorail, not the old school one, but a monorail that can actually go up an incline like the Sepulveda Pass. We only have to do the tunnel because trains can only go 2 to 3% up. that may be able to get up and over that he was saying, I can get you from the North Valley all the way to LAX for the same price as just the tunnel through the Sepulveda Pass. You know? Somebody likes that. But, Dante loves that. We need to look at the technologies that are coming and embrace them. Not every single one of them will work, but what I propose is making an LA that says yes to trying. That we don't do what we're often good at, finding every reason to be opposed to something or every reason why we shouldn't invest, but that we fail forward, because the first city to figure these things out will be the most advanced, will be the most forward, and will create the jobs that I mentioned as well. So I think those three things of good jobs, of building housing, and of making sure that we have a transit system and a transportation system that works for all of us will be key to preserving all of the gains that we had here. And the magic about the Olympics coming here, this morning we were with the president of the International Paralympics Committee, because we didn't just get the Olympics for what will be a third time, we're getting the Paralympics for the first time. And for any of you who participated in the Special Olympics a couple years ago, it is a transformative moment. There's 600,000 people in LA who have some sort of impediment, physical impediment. And the moment that we have the International Paralympics here too, it'll be a transformative moment for making this a city that's accessible, something where our hearts change, where our minds change, and where we think about re-engineering. But we were talking this morning about the effect on a city that the Olympics and Paralympics have. And I don't know what it is. 83% of you were for it. You know, some people say there were a lot of people that were opposed to the Olympics. I said, yeah, 17% of 10 million people is 1,700,000 people. That's a lot of people. But 83% of people usually aren't for anything. Not my mom, of course, but even mothers polled slightly lower than 83% last time I checked. I should have said fathers. But we know that in this town, we in '84 saw how to get things done. We know how to manage things. We know how to make them profitable. We know how to invite the world here and make them welcome. We cleared up traffic. I think half the people wanted me to get the Olympics because even if it's 11 years from now, the idea of 17 traffic-free days is pretty compelling to them. But the question for us here in the Valley, as I wrap this, is who do we want to be? In 2028, when the world comes to us, who do we want to be? I'll tell you who I want to be. I want to be a city where there's no homeless person on our streets. I want to be a city where we get home to see our kids like the good old days in 20 or 25 minutes. I want to be a city where we can buy a home in our first or second job. I want to be a city where we see good jobs staying here and a career of opportunities. I want to see a city where we have good schools and a pipeline to a great higher education system. This past month, we celebrated the Promised Neighborhoods, which includes one part of the San Fernando Valley in the Northeast, where we've turned the graduation rates from as low as 50% to 86% this year. We can do this. Why? We're Angelenos, and this is the Valley. If I learned one thing from this place, it's that whatever you put your mind to, you can do it. I saw it on the streets of the neighborhoods of the city, and we will do this together if we put our minds to it. So, the last thing I wanted to say is that Los Angeles isn't just a city, a physical place. It's an economy, and it's also a community. A nation, and thank God we live in the United States of America, is an accident of history, right? The borders are the result of wars and conquests and other things that happen. A state is just a line somebody draws on a map. But a city is different. It's an organic unit. We come to it, and it grows by the number of people that are here. Today, Los Angeles is the third largest economy in the world. Tokyo is the biggest, New York is the second, and now LA is number 3. And watch out, New York, because we're coming for you. We are a place where you are creating not just a great place to live, but hopefully a great place to prosper. Always tell me what I can be doing better. I go out, I'm doing office hours after this in the Valley. I always do that where people can just sign up and talk to me. And I always learn something from every conversation I have with every person here. But it is you, the chambers at the neighborhood level, that see the changes that are happening, that alert me to the work that we need to do working with our state partners to reform criminal justice reform so we can, yes, not put people away for 20 years for a gram of something too much, but at the same time, we don't just let them out on the streets without any help. so that we see break-ins and burglaries and the things that we need to do, that we need to address to turn around public safety in this city, which thankfully this year is leveled off, but it's an unacceptable level for me and I know for our police department. It is you who will tell us what we need to do to get rid of bureaucracy and when you need us to be there and we're nowhere to be found. And I have faith that together, in this first term together, I look forward next year to coming back again to talking about the work that we have done to build this city of angels for everyone. And never forget, for me, the heart of this city is the San Fernando Valley. This is home, and I thank you for all you do for it. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Please sit down. And the only other person I want to thank, two people, one who's with us and I know one who's with us. Gloria, thank you for all that you do to make this happen every single year. Gloria Pollock, stand up for a second. And Richard, who is looking down on us, is the other one who we remember and thank. Yes, Gloria. Yes. Of course. That's always the toughest question. Will I join us? Again, yes, I will be here, Gloria, for sure. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mayor Garcetti. We have a special gift from behalf of the United Chambers, and I get to present it. It's a nice bowl, and it says, "In appreciation of Mayor Eric Garcetti, United Chambers of Commerce, Annual Mayor's Day, November 29, 2017. And while I was standing up here holding it, I think I know what would fit in this really well. Eric Garcetti for President buttons. So there you go.
I'm sticking around here. Don't worry. We're all good. Thank you very much. Thank you.